Hello guys, in this video we are going to discuss objects by the kind of operation that you can perform on them. So the very first thing you need to understand is that you can perform some operations on the objects, like creating a new object, okay, which we will cover in this video. Next is addition of properties to an object, addition properties to an object. Next is reading or accessing properties, or reading or accessing not the properties but you can say value as pertaining to a key. Next operation that we will discuss is existence. You'll check for whether a property exists in an object or not. Next one is updation. Now this is all about updating the value of existing properties. Next is deletion. Deletion is deleting the existing properties. Next is iteration. If you want to iterate or enumerate, you are looping over the keys and values of an object, you will use the iteration operation. And the second last operation is comparison. The comparison operation is used to compare two different objects. Then is copying. The copying operation makes a copy or a clone of an existing object. So in this video we'll cover everything about the creation of an object. Okay, so let us move back to our slides to start and understand what we mean by the creation of an object. So I'm back in my slides, and as you can see here, the main topic is that we are discussing the objects and their properties. So the operations that you can perform on objects are, as I discussed, are creating a new object, addition, adding a property to an object, reading and accessing the value pertaining to a key. Then existence, you can check for the existence of a property value in an object. Updation, to update the values of some existing property of an object. The next thing is deletion, to delete the existing properties of an object. Iteration, to basically iterate over the keys and values of an object. Okay. Comparison means comparison between two different objects, shallow comparison, deep comparison, which we will discuss. Cloning means to make a clone or a copy of an existing object. Let us start with the creation. So there are scientifically two ways by which we can create an object using literals. The one is using literals, the other one is using the object constructor. So properties of an object are just like variables. So let us see how you can create object using literals. So before understanding this, you need to understand what is a literal. A literal is a scientific notation for representing fixed value in source code. For example, 5 or 4, they literally represent the same value. Now an object is represented as const obj, you can say an empty object, and this is creating an object using the literal notation. The curly braces will create a new object for you. You want to specify properties at the time of creation which you want to insert at the time of creation of an object. You can simply use the curly braces. Within that you can specify all the keys and all the values that are associated with those keys. Like the keys here you see are first name, it has a value of James, last name has a value of Bond, the DOB, which is the date of birth, the friends associated to this entity, which is an object. What are the friends of this entity? That is resembled by this array, which is a list of friends. Then the next thing is that you need to understand that property names can be treated as strings. Like this last name, this is a property name and we are using single quotes to basically say that it is also a property. So property names can be strings, that is the first name and first name within quotes, or last name within single quotes. Any property with or without a single quote can represent a key. That is the takeaway from this. Other thing is that object property name can be any valid JavaScript string or anything that can be converted to a string. Includes the empty string as well. So next is we can have any level of nesting within an object. So you can have a nested object nested within an object, then more levels of nesting can be defined until we get a key that you want to access. So you can say const object, within which you can have another object, then within which you can have another object, and so on and so forth, and you will be able to access the key that you want to access by digging through these levels of nesting. Okay, so this is nesting within an object. The nested object will hold the key of another object. Also, it's very much possible, therefore nesting can be arbitrary and cyclic too, which we definitely want to avoid. Okay, so the values can be of any type. Okay, that is both primitive types and objects can be values. Here you can see that the values are objects. Okay, so primitive or reference type both can be the values of your key in an object. Next is creating an object using the object constructor. The syntax for this is you say const whatever variable name you want to use, new object, okay, and simply invoke the constructor function. The effect of this code and the literal notation is very much the same. However, it is advised to not use the pattern because it's an anti-pattern, and I will discuss that in a later video. So moving forward to computed properties, you can also use an expression that will be evaluated to a string using the new computed property syntax. As you can see, we have a variable name of property, and it is set to a single quote, the favorite series. Const object is equals to, we define a key which is a name of property, we are converting that to uppercase, and we are using the computed property syntax that is represented using the box notation, and we are setting that to a value. So when you will log this object to the console, you will get favorite series set to whatever value is set for this. Okay, so here you can see that in object we are wrapping the expression property name dot to uppercase in box notation to make it a computed property. As expected, in the resulting output, the string first name, here it is the name of property, will be converted to uppercase. Okay, so your key here is uppercase, the value set to it is the same. So let us move forward to functions as key values. Okay, in an object, when we have a function as a value to a key, as in this case you can see that the print series key has a function which is a value set for the key. So you can see it is returning and it's accessing the series name and the director. So you are saying this series name is directed by the person whom this director, okay, whom I don't know. So this resolves to Chernobyl is directed by the person whom I don't know, and therefore you can see the series object on this, you to the left of the dot you can see it's an object, and you are accessing a method that is defined on the object, which is the sorry guys, there is a typo. I had to write print series, but by mistake I wrote print full name. Sorry for that. So it will be print full name, okay, and you are invoking this will give you the correct output. So moving forward, so next we should discuss, so to understand this, when we have a function as a value to a key, moving back, then function is called a method. Okay, it's not a normal function, it's a method because it is defined within the scope of an object. This is one of the most important features of an object. The method have access to key value pairs of an object. They can specify the behavior in an object. So const object, first name, series name, director, print series. So you have added print full name, not print full name, print series method. Okay, there was a typo in this. So the method has access to the properties of the series object using the this keyword. Now we are returning the full name formatted using template literals. In this case, the behavior is to print the full series name and who directed it. Okay, so let us move to addition now before we end with this video. So let us say you know how to create an empty object using the literal notation as well as using the constructor notation. So here we are using the literal notation to create an object. Now to set some property values to this object, we use the dot notation. We are saying address object dot state Delhi, address object dot city is set to New Delhi, address object dot lat, which is the latitude, and the longitude being set to some values. So after you have created this object, you are able to add properties to it using the dot notation. Now if a property with the same name will exist, its value will be overwritten. Okay, whenever you are trying to attempt address object dot state again in subsequent lines of code, the value of Delhi will be overwritten. Okay, otherwise a new property with the property name of state will be defined, or any other property you say, like you want to make a new property. If that property already exists, it will be overwritten, but if that property does not exist, a new property pertaining to that key will be created. So an object can only contain a single value with it can only contain a single key with one value. You cannot have a single key having two different values. The caveat to this is that using the dot notation, you cannot use property names that are numbers or string that contains spaces or special characters or dynamic properties. Then those will throw syntax error. Suppose you are trying to access a property name of 5, say numeric 5. You are saying address object dot 5. Now using numbers as property names is also not possible, so it will throw a syntax error. When you say address object dot first name, so you are specifying first name using spaces between the property names, that is also not possible, or using hyphen is also not possible. All these cases will throw syntax errors. So the correct way to access the properties is shown on the screen. Okay, now moving forward to bracket notation. If you don't want to be limited to the above caveat that I discussed here, you may consider using the bracket notation. So using the bracket notation, what we have to do is you are specifying the key names within double quote and use the box notation and setting them to some value. Now here we are adding address property to the address object. Okay, we are using the name of property variable, setting the address, then address object property, address object property, which is the address. We are setting that to some random value, and then we are using this. You are able to set a key 3 also, and first name using a space, first name using a hyphen. All are now possible, which were earlier not possible using the dot notation. So using the bracket notation, this is possible. Now the few things you have to notice, that the part between the braces is an expression. Okay, that means we can use variable here. Next thing is that type of properties can either be a string or a symbol. If the property is an expression, it will be evaluated. If the property is any other type, it will be coerced to a string value. Okay, so moving forward, suppose you now want to read or access a property. Is by far the most complex thing to understand in JavaScript. Okay, so let us see some simple examples to understand this. Address object dot address, I want to access the address property or the address object. This will return the value pertaining to the address key. Address object first name, that will return a value. Address object middle name will not return a value. Why so? Because this property does not exist on the address object, so therefore it will resolve to undefined. So you can use dot notation or bracket notation to get the value of a property. If the property will exist, you will get a value, otherwise you will get undefined. Let's move forward. Existence. So I would like to wrap up with the video. So we will be discussing about existence in the next video. Thanks a lot, guys.